Okay, we're here.
We're here.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm so always kind of like, I don't know, I feel like we go live, even though this is what it says live, but I feel like we're going live to the ether, to the universe whenever we start. But we're recording and people will see this whenever they choose. So thank you all for being here, wherever you are, for being with us. This is, I think, our penultimo, our almost to the last penultimate. I was like, in English, penultimate um episode. So we have one more. And it's been a little more than a year since Sarah and I have met, virtually connected, developed this whole project. We try to record these episodes once a month, maybe twice a month. And then I went to Washington State to see her, flew across the country because I'm on the East Coast. So it's been great. It's been a whole journey together. And so it's so exciting. I can't believe we're wrapping up this chapter.
It's hard to believe to know that there's only one more after this. So it kind of brings up this emphasis to me of like, make it count, make it good. And especially with our topic today, like say what needs to be said about capacity in general. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here and do this with you. And it's been, the whole journey's been an honor and
Yes.
a beauty to witness and be a part of. So yeah, thank
Yes.
you.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't know if everybody knows the backstory, but I found Sarah, I think Googling, because I was really interested in real estate. And in my podcast, my personal podcast, The Clarity Shift, I was like, I've never talked to somebody who is in the home world about housing and all of that. And and as a millennial and as someone who's 33, and Sarah and I are both 33, I was like, I would love to talk to somebody about that because I've talked to entrepreneurs about all other things, and how to repurpose the corporate ladder and stuff. And so that's how I found her. And I just wanted to interview her on my podcast, and we connected. She was in a different space season of her life, and so was I. And we've just seen each other grow and evolve, and now in different phases of our lives, in different situations at work, with our husbands, with our partners, um, presumably in many different ways. And so it's just been nice to have a whole recording of our journey together as women, as people, as millennials. So just wanted to offer that what started as a small seed became this whole tree, or this whole blooming. So it was really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And if anyone out there has actually listened through all of them and gotten to this point, even if it's like 10 years after recording, please just drop a comment, tag us.
Yes.
It
Yes.
is really interesting. It does feel like going live when you put something out on the internet. It's like we do it to find each other and like to build relationships like this one. Exactly. And so to actually turn around and give it back to the universe, if you will, is really interesting because some of my coolest connections and like deepest familiarities have been with people that I've just met on the internet.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um
No, same. Yeah. It's
it's
so cool.
weird.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
And I guess I should say, or we should say, the topic for our episode today is longing, desire, and direction. So I guess we've already been hinting at that a little bit. The direction that we started with this podcast, the longing that we had, longing, desire, potentially as synonyms, but there's some distinction there, so we can get into that. And the whole premise of this entire podcast is the capacity conversation. So if you're new here, we talk about capacity. And why does that matter? Because we have a limited amount of capacity. It's like we're a cup, and we can only be filled so much, of anything. I think there's a limit to everything. Um, and so we're talking about what that looks like culturally, socially, financially, with work. Like we've picked and prodded religion, our backgrounds, our origin stories. So we're gonna get into what it means to long for something, or what longing means to us, desire, direction, and what capacity has to do with that. The capacity to long, to desire, to have a direction. And yeah, I should have started with our introduction, but I got excited about the penultimo. So
This is
here
the
we go.
introduction. Yes, welcome.
This is the introduction. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
This whole thing. So I guess I'll just do the first part, where two women from each coast of the USA have a challenging dialogue about self trust, transformation, and the reality most modern millennials are facing today. Do we actually have the capacity to do all the things we want to do? Um, so we can introduce ourselves. I I've called myself a clarity and work strategist. Um, Strategy being the operative word, because we can repurpose whatever is left of the corporate ladder, or build a new thing with uh, being a portfolio careerist or entrepreneurship, um, but ultimately being strategic with our energy, resources, money, lifestyle. So I've sought to help people with that, and I will pass it to my co-host, Sarah.
Mhm. I enjoy being your co-host, and every time you explain your work, I'm like, it's so cool. You're so cool. Because I think in the same way you're like, wow, I've never talked to someone who looks at real estate like that. And I do get that sometimes. My name is Sarah Liljegren. That's how you say my last name. Unless you were in Sweden, then it'd be Liljegren. But I haven't been to Sweden yet. Someday. Um, I'm a real estate agent. I work in residential real estate in the Spokane area. I'm not afraid of commercial, and I'm interested in I'm interested in that side of real estate in the context of intentional communities. So I am very interested and passionate about how people can meet all of their holistic needs in their through their built environment, through connection with nature, and not just I think one of the biggest fears of people right now, especially homeowners, people who have land, is that they're going to sell it to development and that it's going to drastically change the landscape, and that what they do in said development is basically
Hmm.
destroy or restart the ecosystem rather than meeting it where it's at and working with it and preserving, just some of the natural environment, the biodiversity. And I could go on and on, but like rewilding real estate is my business. And that only means that I give a portion of all of my real estate sales back to a project that I'm working on. It's going to be my project, to be clear. And hopefully it's a co-housing situation somewhere in Eastern Washington. So that's what I'm working on these days.
Nice. Yay! Yeah, because
Yeah,
if people have listened from the beginning, our titles and our things have changed. So um, yeah, it's exciting.
there's been clarity
Um,
and we've shifted,
yes.
we've
Yes,
evolved.
we have, exactly. Well, that's exactly why I named my podcast that way.
Exactly.
Exactly. Exactly. No, it was very intentional. It had its own, change. I renamed it like 10 times and landed on that.
Right,
But
same.
so yeah, we'll get into longing, desire, and direction. And I don't think that you and I had a specific rhyme or reason as to how we picked out our themes for these episodes. I think it's what came organically from us and what we both synergized on, like the commonality. So if people are wondering, like, this feels random, like, why are these words? And I think as as a generation, as millennials, I've seen some Instagram. I'm on Instagram for fun, you all. Like, I think I've told Sarah, and I've definitely told some of my other friends and loved ones, that I don't look at politics on there. I mean, I could, but I really use it to funnel my fun and feed my joy. And so a lot of dance, a lot of cooking stuff. But all of that is to say that sometimes other millennial type stuff will come on, millennial specific, I guess, algorithmic content. And there was some video I saw about Like millennials don't ever rest. Like there's not been any rest for us because
Mm.
of all the recessions or 9/11 and terrorism and racism and just like constant 2008 bubble burst in the economy crash. So it's just been one thing after another for our generation. And so, what does longing even mean? To long for something when potentially we've never had the space or the opportunity to just pause and want something. How is longing different than desire? And then the direction, because I feel like direction is a seasonal thing. Like maybe for one season in our lives we need to hustle or we have to endure the corporate ladder, but that's kind of a short term stance for a long term kind of. I loved what Sarah was saying about like the real estate is supporting her projects and her things. And so like there's a directionality, there's an intention with that. It's not just, I mean, it could be, you know, just do real estate or just do, but knowing our direction, understanding what we want our path to be, and longing for that path. Um, so it's interesting, I think, to think about. It's hard, I think, to sit with because as millennials, I think we are um universally, like no matter where you are in the global north and the global south, if you're bilingual, trilingual, if whatever it is, I think we all have this common feeling of untetheredness, of just societally. Things have affected us to such a degree where it's kind of like we don't know what our future is. And that could have always been the case, but I feel like before, I don't know if it's the boomers or which generation, but there felt like there was more solidity. I saw some Diary of a CEO episode where he said the Economist was brought on and talked about how people could support a man, a family could be supported on one person's income, and it was predominantly the guy, the man, who could have one job, and the job didn't need a degree. He could have been a construction person or whatever, a blue collar job, and support, let's say, a family of four reasonably well. And you didn't have to be a doctor or a lawyer. Like the gap between those two social classes was not as extreme. And ever since then, um, at least here in the United States, I don't know about other countries, that gap has widened. And not only has it widened, but there's been a lot of talk that I'm aware of about there's no such thing as a middle class anymore. It's kind of like you got one extreme or the other extreme. And so I say all of that to say that I think all of us who are in our 30s, 40s, the millennial generation, and potentially Gen Z too, but this podcast is primarily for millennials. Um, we all, I think, have this in common of like, should we have kids? Can we afford to have kids? Maybe we want to have kids, but it doesn't seem like it's possible. Not because it's a physical thing, but because it's not there's no infrastructure to support that. Affordable housing, like housing is so out. I don't have a house. I've been renting my whole life. Well, when I lived with my parents had a house, but I've been renting since I moved out. So um housing is feels very unattainable, at least in Northern Virginia, where everything is upwards of millions of dollars. And I don't feel committed enough to this area to say I want to get a mortgage and then be part of an HOA and like all the things that I then have to direct myself towards that I may have no desire or longing for. Um, so, anyways, I think this is going to be really special talking about these things because it could bring us back to who we were, the as they say, I guess, in the spiritual world, the inner child, the things that have always potentially stayed true for us. um and then I think we will share about our current lives and what we're longing for, and all of those good things. But I just kind of wanted to set the stage that I think as millennials, regardless of your color, your shape, your nationality, like all these things, I think there's just this commonality of feeling ungrounded, untethered.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. I There's so much that just resonates there. It's like a guitar going, brrrr, and like a beautiful chord. Because it is so timely, and I guess we do prepare for these in some way to be aligned um with what feels true. And I think that's one of my biggest intentions in this podcast, is to speak the truth. And in my business is to speak the truth. I feel like that in my work as an
Mm,
agent, especially, that I get, like, my job is to find out the truth and the chance to help my
mm,
clients make the most informed decision by providing them with the truth. I feel like the bad actors out there in real estate and any industry essentially are
mm,
bending the truth to be their version or share it from their version in a way that benefits them, and
mm,
maybe hinders the other side, maybe not, to get their desire over the finish line. Now, in a real estate transaction, you hope it's a win-win, but ideally, that's how you know you did a good job, is it's a win-win, and that's entirely possible most of the time. Um, but something I want to come back to what you said earlier. I wrote down a couple things. Internal desire, identifying your internal desire, and I think that's what we spoke about
mm,
last time in our episode on edges and how we find our edges and like what we do with the information once we realize we're at a boundary or the boundary's crossed or whatever that means
mm.
to come against your edge, and like the desire to not have to live your life in that place.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I think that's where desire can come in. I mean, that's where it comes in, is like you can acknowledge that you're
Mhm.
living in that place and maybe you live there 24/7. And maybe you desire to not live there 24/7. So even again, just reiterating from last episode too, like being able to recognize that there is an internal dialogue, excuse me, is, I mean, just bringing our awareness to that right now in the moment is like, oh, do we actually notice that I have inner thoughts? And what do I do about those inner thoughts? What do I do about that information? Am I constantly internally rubbing up against what I'm doing in reality, even if it's like, oh, I'm doing this job that I really hate? Like, and I think about it every day, but I'm not really doing anything about it because it is the system that I'm working in. And so what do we do with that information, and how can we then work with our environment to adapt ourselves so we're not grading against our environment? And I feel like there's so many applications for that. And that does feed into housing, because I do think that a big driver for me is like yelling to the universe, hey, the middle class still exists. And just because there is no housing that we can afford doesn't mean there's not still this huge population of people globally, but and especially here in the United States that I'm speaking about, is like there's this huge population of people who make just enough to get by. And like these people are being outhoused, and
Mm.
it's happening in urban environments, rural environments, suburban environments, industrial environment. I mean, everywhere. The commercial bubble. I don't, oh, I hesitate to use the word, but like commercial
What
real
word
estate
was
is an interesting,
Oh,
like there's the
oh,
commercial, like the buildings that are just used for office, and like all these mandates
got
must
it.
go back to the office. Like, how does that affect commercial real estate and the economy
Mm,
as a bigger thing? But I'm just very interested in that. And I don't want to rabbit hole too far into like real estate economics, but you spoke about yeah, an economist earlier, and it just, like, this is a huge part in finding our capacity to navigate our economy, is you have to sharpen yourself with enough skill to navigate it. And that's exhausting. And that's not even accessible for most middle class people. Because why? They're making just enough to get by. And especially in the past 10 years, I mean, we've spoken about this in our personal lives and relationships. Like, it's a
mhm.
strain on personal relationships when it
Yeah,
takes 4, 5 incomes to maintain one household. And
that's
so
right.
Like that's so, so, so important for every generation to remember, is that that's what our generation and the younger generation below us are facing right now. So
That's right.
this nervous system baseline of, well, why can't, I mean, just I can't even imagine what one income to actually support a mortgage would be like, you know? Yeah, it is hard to
Oh,
imagine.
I
Um
know.
and and so you said also who we were, like remembering. And I think that goes like, remember when our parents, like not that freaking long ago, had that
Mhm.
nervous system of like privilege.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm not saying for generationally, I'm not saying in, you
Right.
know, any
Right.
one
Right. Right.
population, but it is that
Right. Right.
alone as a pattern in the United States is something that I feel like this whole project is about, is naming it, acknowledging it, and saying, hey, whoever's listening, listen up,
Mm,
because we're really
yeah.
mad. I'm like pointing my finger like I'm scolding the
It,
government or something. You know, talking about putting it out to the universe, but like we're really upset that
yeah.
we can't live our lives anymore. Like our livelihoods have been taken from us, our ability to actually enjoy life, because we are forced to increase what we make. And then I just think that puts so many people in such dangerous situations. So, um, yeah, the audacity. But I say
Mm.
this as someone who is living in a house with a mortgage. And so
Mm,
being in an area where we can afford it was
yeah.
important to us, and acknowledging like there are parts of I heard Dave Ramsey say this one time, and it really pissed me off because I was like, this
Mm,
isn't the answer. You know, he said like sometimes you just gotta suck it up and move to a cheaper part of the country or a cheaper area. And I'm like, that's just not the answer. You know, like just leave your area. Like I think that just feeds this story of like Exodus is a normal
mhm.
human thing, which it is, but not always in the best way. And so like acknowledging
Yeah.
why do we leave areas, and in how do we do it in a good way or bad way. So I'm going to stop rambling now, and maybe we can talk about longing, because maybe that's how we segue into longing,
No, you're good.
because
No, you're good. No, you're
we do
good.
long for
Yeah.
that
No, I loved everything that you said, and I
yes.
two things, and the one thing for the segue for longing that I want to say before it leaves my mind is all of these things, whether we have a structure or not, or like whatever is happening around us, I think does affect our ability to long for things because I was telling you off the call, like, and for those who don't know, I'm a very transparent person. I feel like I have and this has not always been true, let me say that, but I think it's important for me, at least I won't speak for it, to be transparent and share where I'm at in life and things. And um I feel like if even if I wanted, which I do want, it's part of my longings to be fully in my business, which means for me having a certain amount of income to support my household, which is just me, my husband, and two dogs for the moment in Northern Virginia, because we first of all we can't move because well, my husband is undocumented, so I can't do as Dave Ramsey says because there's a legal tie to where we live. And even if we wanted to afford, even if we wanted to move wherever so that we could afford less, if the government screws up, which it most likely will because of bureaucracy and red tape, then how will they find us to be able to continue in our legal process? So there's that. So even if I longed, which I do, we want to have a homestead, we want to have chickens, we want to live somewhere, we can't do that. We can't do that for the foreseeable future, which also curtails the ability to have kids if we wanted to, because it's our choice, right? How we want to live our lives. But I don't have the intention of having children in a one bedroom, one bath. And that also affects how much the gap or like the ceiling of our potential earnings, because if anything changes in this area, how are we going to provide, how are we going to pay bills, It's not like we can just up and leave and just have chickens and live off of that. We have to pay bills, there's utilities. So the ability to long and even the directionality gets affected by societal infrastructure. And I will just say, because I think I started this podcast with in our first episode on this podcast saying, I don't know how I identify, and I feel like I'm a moderate. And that's still true. And I've said consistently that I lean liberal, I lean progressive, and I think this is exactly why. Partly people might say, oh, because I'm brown, because I'm Latina. And that's potentially part of it, but I don't think a progressive party has always been black or brown. I mean, I love seeing the documentaries of like the Republicans were had the same philosophy of the Democrat. Like the philosophies have switched.
They flipped.
Um, but I'm a progressive, whatever that means, because um, institutional powers affect people regardless of your gender, color. Especially now, I think there's this whole law that if, or tentative law, if women have changed their last names and it doesn't match with the birth certificate, with the passport, with all these things, um, that's a real possibility for women not to be able to vote in whatever way they choose to vote. So that's an infrastructural limitation being placed on women potentially here in June of 2026. Gerrymandering, which is a whole thing here in the United States of changing counties and the way states are structured, affects people, I will say, in different ways. And so this is why I am an advocate for people advocating for themselves, um, for education and literacy above all things. Because how can we long? How can we have the possibility to even go in a direction if there's a lack of, I love how Sarah talked about truth, because I struggle with that word, because I'm like, there is no objective truth in my opinion. Everybody has, like, I will never know what it is to be a white person. So I can't speak that truth. I can speak my experience, I can speak my anecdotal data, and you know, presumed to be witnessed and heard, and that if that can allow for me to desire things and hopefully be seen and create pathways and directions and all of that, and a longing for a government that is supportive of all people in whatever that makes sense, because the United States is a big ass country with multiple little countries inside. But I struggle with that word because it's like, you know, I don't what I long for will obviously not be what others long for, and that's okay. But the permission, the access for people to be able to long for something. I mean, I love this quote. um I think he was a French philosopher, Voltaire, who said, I may not agree with what you say, not you, Sarah, in general, but like that was the quote. If I may not agree with what you have to say, but I will fight for your right to say it. And this is what I think progressive versus traditionalism versus fundamentalism is so different, because even though it is so uncomfortable to allow the space for other people to long for abortion, or for Muslims to wear hijab, or whatever it is, like that doesn't, the discomfort doesn't take away for their right to long and for the direction that they choose in their life. And I was telling my husband, who's an immigrant, and my whole family who are immigrants, that I was like, that's what I love about this country. This is the only country that I know of in the whole world, and there's many countries, that is the only one that people consciously immigrate to for whatever reason, because the US has done dealings in the back alleys, or because whatever has happened in the society, but like historically, third world countries, all this stuff. Um, People come here and you can be an American. You can take a citizenship test whatever the pathways are, there are pathways to do that. But it's not like I can go be an Italian. Like I can go be Ghanaian or Egyptian, you know? So I love that. And I think that um the longing of this of our generation, I think, is to be more united, even in our differences, and to love each other more, to have this strong longing of compassion. Um, because I think so much is lost of like, you're right, you're wrong, this is what this should be like. I have no business telling anybody else how to live, but I still want them to live truly to themselves and fully. Um, so I hope that was the segue in terms of longing and stuff, but I had to get on my soapbox because I'm just, yeah.
I think um, that is a good segue into it. And I also want to check in really quick because being a real estate agent, I just got a call that I need to call somebody back. So I was wondering if you want to go into the entomology and riff on it for a few minutes while I call my client, or we can pause and come back to it. Either one. I really don't mind. It's up to you.
No, I'll continue because we don't. Oh, also I should tell people we don't edit this, so it's just
Yeah,
straight
no,
through.
and
So
that's why
I'll
I'm
keep
being
that.
real because I'm like, I
No,
do
you're
need to
good.
call these
You're,
folks because there's some earnest
you're
money
good.
that's due in a couple hours and I need to
No, you're
clarify
good. Go
something.
do
So
your thing. Go go
great.
go
Yeah,
do
you
your thing.
have, yeah, I love it. I'll jump back in.
Okay. So what we usually do on this episode or on the podcast in general is we share the etymology, which for those who aren't as familiar, it's the study of words, in particular the study of the root of the word. Because all words and language and all the things have origin stories. So we wanted to share the etymology for the three themes, three kind of topics that we're covering in this episode: longing, desire, and direction. So the word longing comes from Old English, from langlong. I don't think I'm pronouncing that. And it means a yearning, and it stems from the verb langien, to desire, to pine, or grow long. So there's this, what comes to mind for me is this feeling of, I don't know if arduousness, not to put another tricky word in there, but um, this feeling of like there's something out there or someone out there that there's this waiting, there's this sense of waiting and um, excuse me, anticipation, um untetheredness, because it's like, well, we don't know if that person will reciprocate, or we don't know if the government will ever give whatever, structural things. So there's this unknown feeling, there's this sense of waiting and pausing and reflecting, and I don't know if I would call it stillness, but it's interesting as we start to think about in our work, in our relationships, in health. Like there's all these potential things that we want, that we're seeking, that we're longing for. And long, so it's not a passive thing. It takes energy, it takes action, and it's taking something from us to want that thing, even if we're not actually taking steps yet. But even the mental, emotional, spiritual, and then eventually financial energy, like all of that is requiring something of us. And so, do we even have the capacity to long for something? I was doing this whole spiel about having kids or having a homestead or all these things. And I do want those things. I do desire them, which I'll get into next. And I do long for it, but I can't plan my direction. I can't plan. It's not feasible for me right now. Um, and so I don't have the capacity mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially to long for that, because it's not realistic for me right now. And I think that's a very hard um, trade-off for us to make, especially those in our 30s, um, who we see all this potential in our lives. Um, I could go to back to school. I could change jobs. I could, but actually tethering it more, feeling more grounded, kind of stepping back and not being as active with our thoughts, with our feelings, not being so busy with it, but actually being able to um, observe the longing, observe um, the feelings, and questioning why. Um, so I'll stop there for longing. The next word we have is desire, which was interesting that even the word longing, um, I mean, the word desire was used to define longing, so that was kind of interesting. And the word desire is older. It comes from the Latin verb, oh my goodness, desiderare, which translates to long for, to miss, or request. Um, and it says the word de from desire comes, it means from or of, so of something. And um, in the Latin word sidus, it means star or constellation. So it's of the stars. Um, but it's interesting that that's the root word of the Latin verb, and it takes it to a whole other level. So let me piecemeal this a little bit and put the pieces together for me. Um, so to miss something, to request something, and again to long for something. So I feel like those are three different things, because missing something I feel like is almost um I don't know if mourning or grieving is probably too strong of a word, but there's an absence, and so there's this feeling, this recognition of something is lacking, something is missing, and so there's a request to fill it in, to kind of color in the lines, the shapes, and so um, to desire something, to not just want, because I didn't see that in any of the definitions here or in the interpretation of the etymology. um it's not, it doesn't seem to me that to desire something is um to pursue something, to want something, to be on top of it. It's more like, or at least for me, it feels like it's something, there's a lack, there's something missing, there's a reciprocity piece that's missing. Um, there's um, there's a request of something, which is different. I think it's interesting that they use to long for, longing, as a definition, because I feel like um it's a bit misplaced. I might have a desire, a request, or someone, something, a desire for promotion, more money, less debt, uh, more muscle definition. I mean, I don't know, all these different things. And um, in that, there seems to be a sort of request, like um, I'm asking something, someone, um, outside of me for this thing. So whereas longing is just this kind of I I'm desiring this, or like, I mean, why are they using these two? I'm going back and forth between the pages, and it's kind of annoying that they're using the same word to define the other word. Um, but I feel like longing is just kind of, there's no request being made of others, of something else outside of us. It's just kind of, we're in ourselves, we're in our feelings, wanting this thing. And I think desire is interesting in that way, that there seems to be this definition of a request. I'm missing this thing. And I'm requesting, support, help. I want to lean on somebody. I desire, uh, whatever it is. I was talking about muscle definition and no dead and all these things. So it's just interesting that longing and desire are kind of used to define each other, but in the etymology, the structure, the origin of the word is of both words are really different. Um, so I'm gonna pause there to see what you heard and if you want to chime in on anything, Sarah.
Yeah, um I was sorry to miss what you said. I'm sure I'll catch it on the
No,
recording.
no, you're good.
But those were some important calls, and I'm catching that the that desire and longing are defining each other, but I'm also glancing at this particular definition of desire, and I'm wondering if you mentioned that, like, the watching for an absent um star and
I mentioned
the aspect
I
of
mentioned a little bit about that.
calculation. Okay.
I mentioned a little bit about
Yeah, how like there's something far off about it. Like
that. Yes.
far, far away
Yes.
about desire, like it's actually not there.
Mhm.
Or
Mhm.
I don't
Mhm.
know, what do you I mean, is it like unattainable, or is it
Right.
just the desire is the felt gap between me and the star that we are watching for? And so maybe it will appear, and maybe that's why stories are different, and that's why desire creates this sense of suspense that makes stories so rich, but huh,
Mm,
okay,
mm,
interesting. But longing
mm,
um is fundamentally about distance experienced as ache. And so that's the grievance, the actual grieving, the more of the emotional aspect
mm,
to
mm,
um
mhm,
this lack
mhm.
of something. That's actually something that if I can just keep riffing on that
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
the theme that Claude, because we talk about AI and how we pull AI notes in some things and not other things. And I've noticed that sometimes we are really like heavy on notes, and other times we really just like use one theme and really extrapolate a lot of storytelling from it. But in this case, like I would never have thought about the constellation or the entomology being related to stars.
Mhm,
Um, but or like how they relate to each other, because
mhm,
the theme, this is what I want to say, that the three words form a surprisingly coherent phenomenology of oriented lack. And when I hear
mm,
the word lack, I think about scarcity, and I think about the need to consume to survive. And if we lack those needs, or
mm,
wants even, what happens to
mhm,
us?
mhm,
So
mhm,
we
mhm,
begin
mhm,
to long and desire and get pulled maybe in a
mm,
particular direction, because I think movement is inevitable. We've talked about this, like movement, we are embodied creatures. We have to I mean, if we stop moving, we die. I mean, breath, we're always breathing, our blood is always moving. Like there's just that's what we are. We are direction because we are movement. And so how we can orient our lack towards something that actually might nourish us or shelter us or feed us, ideally in a good way, or in a way or in a direction that is beneficial to us,
mhm,
um,
mhm.
that we could actually perhaps like be co-creators and rulers of our lives. We don't have to be kind of forced about or pulled
Right.
or pushed, that we could
Yeah,
decide
yeah,
together.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I didn't use these I had something Googled up. I used Google. Let me just say that. I used Google. um and what I was what I caught was, or like what came up for me in reading the etymology was that like longing, well the first thing was I found it interesting that Google in particular, I'm sure if people go to Merriam-Webster or dictionary.com, like maybe other types of things come up, but Google used both desire and longing to define the other. So like the word desire was used to define longing and then vice versa. So that was interesting because when I was looking at the etymology, what came up in desire, I'll just pull it up here. It says, um, it mentioned the star or constellation. It mentioned the prefix de, de, meaning from or of. Um, which is still true, like in romantic languages, de nada, we have de in there. Um, it's interesting that it had like something is missing or there's a request. And so in desire, I was kind of interpreting it as more of the lack because it's like, well, something is missing in order to desire something. And then in longing, it's more this um like this wanting, pining, yearning for something, but it doesn't seem to be the way I interpret it. There didn't seem to be something is missing from my life and I need to fill that void. It's more like I want the thing. I'm yearning about. So I don't know. I maybe dig into it more, but that's what was interesting to me is even in the word desire that it said that there's a request of something. So it's like I'm requesting my feelings to be reciprocated. I'm desiring this person or I'm desiring some level of reciprocity at work in my body or something. And versus longing is just this for me what I was taking away from it was this feeling of um I don't know if passivity, it feels like active. I want this thing, but there doesn't seem to be an active like there's no movement towards it. I just want this thing. Um so I don't know. Those were the differences. I haven't gotten into direction yet, but I feel like or the etymology of direction, but I feel like if all we do is long as millennials or as individuals, if all we do is long and we don't take action, to your point about like movement and everything, then we're stuck. There's no direction. I mean, unless the direction is going in circles or not, or standing
Mhm.
still. Um, and if we desire something, I almost feel like desire is a healthier version of longing from what I'm taking away. Because it seems like there's more of again, there's this request, there's this, and even the star piece is like, back in the day when people knew what the North Star was and all these things, there's this automatic directionality. Like, I don't know exactly where I'm going, but I'm going to trust that that North Star is where I can go. Oh, and I finished for those who watched listen to the other episode, I was talking about Vikings Valhalla in the other previous episode um, of this podcast. And I finished the series. And, in the series, Leif, who is a historic figure who was Viking and traveled, great navigator. I don't know the whole history of this guy, but suffice it to say that using the infrastructure, the environment, the world, um, to navigate, to have a direction. And from what I understand, he didn't necessarily have anything else except a desire for understanding the world and other cultures and traveling um, and using the stars, using that direction. And so um, that's why I feel like it's interesting to think about. Well, it's not interesting. It kind of sucks to a certain extent. It kind of sucks that infrastructures impose on us, limit our directions. It's kind of like we're racehorses and there's those blinders forced on us. And maybe some of our lives is all about removing the blinders and wanting to see the full scope. Um, and that's hard because that takes capacity, that takes real resources. Um, but I like this idea. I like this sentiment of desiring something, and that in that desire, in that kind of looking for external, that star, that guidance, that in and of itself can provide direction. So I'm gonna stop there before I keep just riffing.
I mean, I'm just gonna cling on to that last thing you said for because I feel like it was very like coalescing to me is that desire actually can inform direction. And
Mhm,
that's how the words
mhm,
are related. Um, it's interesting that you say that the longing almost sounds like a healthier version of or no, you said that desire almost sounds like a healthier version of
uh,
longing because
mhm,
longing is this place of grief that
Mhm.
something that actually grips you where you're at.
Mm.
Um, because the Old English langolin, if I'm saying
Mhm.
that wrong, to
Yeah,
yearn or
it's
to
okay,
grieve
you're good.
for is directly connected to the adjective long. So this idea that something is spatial and an extension, to
Mm.
long for something is to feel yourself stretch towards it as if the space between
Mm.
is felt in your body,
Mm.
like something is actually far away. There was a period when my husband and I were separated that it was
Mm.
deep longing. Like, I felt sick
Mm.
with longing at one point, and
Mm. Mm.
and, like, where was he? And I when I've led grief hikes, the people who have lost spouses talk about this, whether it's divorce or death, in whatever capacity it's longing. It might be physical, it might be
Yeah.
emotional, it might be that they miss those conversations.
Yeah.
Um, so I do in talking about since bringing up grief, like, um,
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
it is interesting that that's the place that grips you and holds you there, but it's also,
Mhm.
like, fundamentally an orienting place to be. That it's not
Mm.
necessarily informing direction the same way desire might, but acknowledging
Right.
that you haven't maybe can inform desire, that there's longing.
Yeah.
You can actually desire
Yeah.
to be out of it. Like, maybe
Yeah.
because
Yes.
I
Yeah.
talked about this
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I'm just had, like, a revelation. That, like, that's kind of the mustard seed thing that we talked about with faith.
Yeah.
It's like, I
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
when I lost my faith, like,
Mm.
lost it, to get it back, I only ever asked for a tiny bit. And I only
Mm.
ever started again with a teeny tiny, like the mustard seed
Mhm.
thing. And I've always had that around as like a memento. And I think like
Mhm.
seeing it as a reminder and saying like, no, that's all I can give. Like, because I have lost so much faith in
Mm.
XYZ,
Mm.
like whatever. Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
that was the depression of like longing for like this longing. I feel like I've also longed for truth for most of my life. And
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
you're
maybe we
Libra.
can riff on that because like I think yeah, you said that earlier of like, yeah, you can never experience life as a white person. And to me, that is the truth. Like
Mhm. Yeah,
that
exactly. Yeah,
statement, you might
exactly.
not be able to experience the
100%.
truth and like acknowledge. And
Yeah.
that's why I'm like, oh, I love that we talk about words because even the word truth, like, well, to me, that's a different thing. Or like different
Mm.
perspective as truth is a different truth. And it's like having all these words for love. Like English just sucks.
Mm.
Um, yeah,
Mm.
types of truth, I feel like. Do you think it's true that people longing for the same thing can have different desire or different I don't know.
I
Like
think
there's
things can be true. I don't know if there's one truth, if that makes sense. Like,
yeah.
I think it's true that I love you, and it's true that I love myself, and it's like things are true, but I feel like using the word truth is almost as if it's a measurement. Like we're measuring this thing as a fact, and even facts are questionable. I feel like even facts change because people what um decide is like, oh, the earth is flat, and then no, it's not flat anymore. And so I feel like truth is almost that way in like it's who defines it,
Mhm.
what's the level of objectivity we're going for, because things are true for sure. And I feel like, at least for me, my brother-in-law, he identifies as conservative and Trump supporter and all these things, and so we get into it sometimes because it's he asked me one day, he's like, Raquel, if all you do is ever question things, where do you land? Like, then what do you know? Really, what is knowledge? What is it to know something? And I said something
Mhm.
along the lines of, but if I don't question, then I don't know. So it's I feel like to know something isn't an end to something. Kind of like I think we talked about in one of our other episodes. There's always this rebirth or new seasons. Um one fall isn't the same as another fall. So to say that each fall is the same is wrong. But to say that fall autumn exists, that's true. So I don't know if I am not explaining myself,
No, that
but
makes sense. That makes sense to
yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah.
Oh man, I had a thought, but then I lost it. Um, yeah, I guess what's coming to mind now is like redefining truth, I think is one of the biggest conversations of our time. And like or whatever that means to people. Because I feel like that's where so many
Mm,
people, fundamentalists, extremists, um, as well as just, I think a lot of people who are just compelled to make sense of things, are drawing lines in the sand on what they consider their truth or what is true for them. And I think that
mhm.
just that just shies away from this other opportunity to understand, um, where other people are coming from and more isolation and, going back to generational desires maybe. And like my work in housing is like I feel like so many people our age and with our interests and our moderate stance on things are ready to work, like learn how to be with other people in a better way, where we want to disagree better, we want to hold conflict in a healthier, more educated, not educated, gosh, I hate that word, but like like informed,
Like,
like
yeah,
yeah, I guess educated to some extent, some extent of like the skills required to listen to opposing opinions, and someone else's truth or what is true for someone else without
right.
it offending my lens or my narrative or my story or my dogma or my perspective on the world in a way that harms me.
Mhm,
I think that's
mhm, mhm,
I think
mhm.
that's what, even if we don't start out with a certain mindset, going
Yeah,
back to grief can change us in a way that really does like fuck up our sense of longing and our sense of what we thought was
yes,
true, that now because of this story and this story and this story now we have to change this. And
right.
and even hearing myself say that, I'm like, oh, I'm thinking of all these examples of why people would still, um I don't know, I hear my own self, like, beat back against that because, like, all I
Right.
have all these reasons for not wanting kids, right? And you spoke to this, and this is something we've spoken about and agree on is, like, listen, there's a lot of economical reasons not to have kids right now because if it means I'm gonna lose the house, like, do we want to do that with a child, or without one? And I don't, I think that's a hard calculus. And even saying what I just said is like, there's all these voices in my head that's like, still, Sarah, you have community to figure it out. You have all these resources. It's
Mm,
like, um, then the other wolf or gremlin side of my head is like, but it doesn't take much for those to break down either.
right.
So how do
Yeah.
we keep
Yeah.
ourselves safe and free from potentially desiring um what could have been like a decent life, but we just it seems so unattainable. And so just desiring just a house and a dog and to not work overtime for the rest of our lives. To start there is a pretty simple desire. So naming it, yeah, I guess, and all of that to ramble, just to say, like, naming what your desire is and whether that
Yeah.
information shows up for you internally or externally, and
Yeah.
being able to acknowledge that and what you do with that
Yeah.
information will inform your next step and inform like
Yeah.
whether or not the direction that you feel is the right direction actually is the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah. I love everything that you said because something that I was when you were talking about longing and desire, I don't know, maybe I'll retract about like desire is the healthier version, but I felt like um longing is like a stagnation, like potentially. It keeps one in a certain mode. where I felt like desire is this,
Mm-hmm.
even if we're not taking action, but there's this feeling of like, oh, like almost this warm up of whatever before whatever is gonna happen. It was like this jump start, it almost felt like. And I think that for me, longing is a scary place to be because I feel like it's easy, well, easy for me, maybe not everyone, but it's easy for me um to stay with my thoughts or stay with my feelings. and and I think going back to truth, it's like the more that, at least for me, I'll just speak for myself, the more that I try to find the one thing, it's like the more tunnel vision I get. And um that for me is longing, is like I just long, and I'm longing, and everything is long, and it's just is that's it. And so there doesn't seem to be like, okay, and so what, and why, and that questioning, that awareness, that like, okay, great, so we're kind of in this awareness, we've got something bubbling, we've got something, so now what are we going to make of this thing? So hopefully longing is like the first step towards desire, if I'm looking at dominoes. But I think that the question of truth and true is interesting because um like right now it is true that I'm not in a position to have kids. Not because I don't know if my body can do it, but just the infrastructure. But I don't know if that's the truth, you know? And so um and also like what we were talking what you were saying about the like being able to have conflicting difficult conversations with people who uh were of different cultures or different mentalities, all these things. I think um I don't know, I would like to, my desire my desire for people and for our generation is um to not, I don't know, I don't want to just say to not look for the truth, but it's like to be able to be be compassionate of other people's trueness. I don't know, I feel like there's something stopping me from saying truth because I don't feel like that. It's like for me, if I say there's one God, I don't know, um and other people may or may not agree, and that's on them to believe that. So I don't, I struggle with objectivity. How about, let me say that. I struggle with objectivity because um whether we all have one human experience, like we're all going to live and die, that is the truth. But how we live and the best way to live is going to vary. Like there's, you know, what is right for me is not going to be right for somebody else. Job hopping my entire career was right for me, but it probably is not. You know what I'm saying? So it's like putting these general statements or even like stereotypes. Oh, all women suck driving, or all Latinos are like this. Like that's not, you know, general blanket statements I don't like, which is why I think I have this knee jerk reaction. Like it puts me off to say truth because it feels like done, close the chapter, close the book. And I'm like, but life doesn't work that way. And
Yeah,
um,
I was
you know,
I almost said there's so much truth in that. And then I stopped myself because it is true. I have at least seen it to be true and many of my own personal experiences that when you answer what something is, the curiosity
mm,
or name it, even if you name what something is, it often stops or slows the curiosity about said thing.
mhm,
One of the most
mhm,
fascinating parts of learning bird language in my naturalist studies has been allowing myself to question what type of bird I'm hearing and practicing
mm,
hanging in that curiosity because it allowed me to listen more and more and more times, harder and hard, like listening harder, but like paying more attention. trying to notice more patterns about this thing that I'm hearing. And I would start to look for the bird, and then I would see, oh, it's that type of bird, it's that color. Oh, and then I would see it again. Oh, it's that same bird. It's that same bird. Like, what's that bird? And then going to, I mean, and I acknowledge that I need to look at more field guides lately, because it is so easy, especially with AI now, um, to have all this knowledge pulled from the internet at once instead of just Googling a question. And so
Mm,
talking about AI, like, I feel like that is the trap of learning in this way. Of like,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
easy to not even get out the field guide and acknowledging that, oh my gosh, I've lived in this place for a year and I haven't got out my field guide about the plants in a
yeah,
year.
yeah,
Because a lot of the plants I recognize, but the ones I don't, that I am curious about, sometimes I'll just take a picture of it instead. And so, I'm not saying that there's one right or wrong way, but I think being curious, um, or like saying there is this abstract, this is the thing that it is, um, does halt at least curiosity in that way. And so that's what I mean
yeah,
by, like, there's a lot of truth to what you said about that, about truth, which is
yeah.
interesting. It's actually kind
Yeah.
of frustrating, but even looking up the word truth, like Googling
Yes.
answers, right? And having this
Yeah.
AI overview of all these different theories of truth and reality. And then Merriam-Webster, truth is the body of things, events, and facts. But then C.S. Lewis Institute says truth is in accordance to whatever is in with the way in which God created the world. Falsehood is anything that goes
Okay.
against God's. Yeah. Cambridge, the actual truth or fact about the matter. The Britannica dictionary. Truth in philosophy is property of sentences, assertions, beliefs, thoughts, or propositions that are said in an ordinary discourse to agree, conformity to reality or fact. So
Mm.
I feel like even in the defining of what truth is, there's all these subjective perspectives. So even as someone who loves truth and justice, and I feel like I was born to to seek this abstract thing, it is abstract. It's not as clear cut as like my brain that was raised to see things fundamentally. It's not very
Mm.
satisfying to think that truth isn't as solid as we want it to be. It's actually very unsettling. So I'll just say that and leave it that there.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Because I wanted to say so many things, and I think I'll just say that, like, um I I like astrology. I'll start with that. I like doing astrology. And I did my husband's chart and I did my chart because early on in the relationship, I I realized that we weren't speaking the same language. I mean, English or Spanish, no. Like mentally, we're just not there. And one of his the thinking sign, the Mercury sign, I think it is Libra for him, and my Mercury is Cancer. So for those who aren't as in tune with astrology or whatever, it just means that he thinks more logically and I think more emotionally. If you could think emotionally.
Yeah.
um and so it's like when I would share with him, I just want you to be in my corner. I just want you to be able to put yourself in my shoes and my skin and what's the word, empathize. I'm not looking for rationale. There probably is rationale to explain my behavior and other people's, but I just need a witness in this moment and to feel the punches with me. And that took a long time because he was like, but if you do this, and I'm sure this, and I'm like, and that's all great. And I appreciate that. And I didn't ask for any of that. Like, I will ask you, I just need you. I just desire for the longing. I actually desired to just be in the moment, in the suck, in the grief. Um, and I think that's really hard, especially me owning that truth about myself that there's a step I have to take in me before I can actually go in a direction, go in a path. Like I have to be in the longing first, before potentially bringing other people in, especially my husband, who has a certain way of thinking. Um, and I think that's interesting because capacity, like I was reflecting on all of this yesterday when I had a tough day at work. I was kind of like, who is going to have the capacity to meet me where I want to be met in this moment? Who's going to be able to um, be somewhat sharing the burden with me, um, in a way that I would like to. And my husband was not the first person. I love you if you're listening. But it's just like I just know. I just, and that's self-care and that's capacity. And
Mm.
it takes time to like discern that, because I have to pause and be in that longing and be a bit uncomfortable, mourning and grieving of, you know what, I'm not going to get the immediate relief in order to get the direction I want. And I may not get immediate comfort from the person I would like it to come from, my husband, but none of those mean that I can't still, like, it's still true that I need to get my needs met. Like the other stuff doesn't negate my truth. And so that it's kind of challenging because it's infrastructurally, I was telling you, Sarah, before the call, that it's like we need people. I think that's another thing in our generation is COVID hit us hard, so many different things.
Mm.
I heard about this term yesterday as I was doing my longing, being in my longing. This term about the parentified child, which I'm doing research now on, which, as I understand, it's a person, a child who had to take on being an adult essentially for their parents, whether that's emotional work, whether that's logistical, having to work and be a provider. In my case, as an only child, it was a lot of the emotional work because my parents were always fighting the entire time, and I really wanted them to get a divorce. And I see that now, like at work, I was kind of observing myself like, wow, I'm taking up, I feel like I'm that person again. I'm the mediator. I'm the only child trying to figure it out, fix it, because the direction I see myself is I like my job. I like the team. But in order to stay, I have to create the conditions because the infrastructure is not there and nobody else is doing it. So I got to do it because who else is going to do it? And I was witnessing myself and realizing that. And when this term came up, I was like, holy shit. Like, we don't even, I don't think any of us really realize um, what our capacity is at any given time. I think it's hard to gauge. Should we push through this? Is it worth it to push through this? Is it worth it to be in the longing? Like, what is the trade off? Because there's a trade off. Um, and finding that trueness, that truth in that moment, um, is I think challenging. But all of that is to say that I think that's why I love these episodes talking about capacity and all the different ways that it shows up, because longing is hard, desiring is hard, directionality is hard, and the capacity to do any of that is is hard.
the
Yeah.
the capacity to navigate the infrastructure of your resources is like a completely different skill than building said network of resources or knowledge. And I find that to be true in my work. Like, I know how to get one project done. I know how to help one person achieve one vision and take them through a standard operating procedure of interested to transaction closed. Um, but navigating in the moment, like even taking the calls I did in this episode, like live time, this is real. um, is like it's a completely different skill of navigating, oh, those notes and those resources that I pulled through, where did that come from? How do I track it? How do I organize it? How do I get the right information to the right person at the right time? Because I am working with multiple timelines, and Just because I can do one linear thing doesn't mean I
Mm,
can do 10 of that same linear thing at the same time, which is what
mm,
complex systems like working with people is like, and working on land, and working with home, and working with our careers and the body. I just glance over and I see like the body of wanting, because that's what longing is. That's what it names, is the felt, like our bodies are wanting something. And
mm,
just to continue on that thread, that the object of that's being waited for in that wanting is the desire. And
mm,
like that watching for a distant absent star, that thing that's just not showing up yet, that
mhm,
desire for something that isn't there, that's far away,
mm,
allows us to create space and acknowledge what we want to move toward, even if it's missing, or even if we kind of have an idea about something. Because um I'm sure you did this while I stepped away from my phone call, but like, oh, you didn't say talking about direction. That's right. But
no,
I
no, no,
have
I
a
did
few notes about direction. I think it's
please, please do.
really interesting, that the direction is the vector that that want takes. So
Mm,
it's the
mhm,
line, it's the ruled straight line between you and the thing that you're orienting toward, or
yeah,
desiring.
yeah,
If you can
yeah,
if you
yeah,
can imagine that thing somewhere, whether it's up or down or to the left or right or side, or I used to play this game with Paul Linden, who's a somatic martial artist, somatic kind of
mm,
coach, teacher, trauma educator. But he would use the pen, he would call it the pen game or something like that. But he would talk about like, you desire the pen, everything you want is inside of this pen. And so, there's these series of questions, to orient yourself mentally to like actually everything you want and visualizing it in a pen. And you get to a certain
mm,
point where you start to move in a certain way toward the
mm,
pen or away from the pen. And these felt senses, again going back to like, well, how one, do you have internal information that you're processing? And two,
right.
do you feel it and can you articulate it? And that's why
Mm,
somatic work is actually really helpful. And I just naming that I came from a somatic decision making workshop last weekend, and so maybe that's why some of this, which is interesting because we planned this thing before that happened, and I didn't expect it to make the deep, profound impact it did. But like, that's what somatic work does, and that's why having a
yeah,
direction is so helpful. Because if you can actually name what you want in life, which is fucking
mhm, mm,
hard to do, if you can actually do that and actually see it somewhere in your line of sight or field of vision, you
mm,
could potentially orient yourself to the thing you want most in the world. And then you could potentially go on a grand adventure to get there. And that's why journeys and pilgrimages and adventures and risk taking
mm,
and jumping and running and like moving through life is potentially like both terrifying and fascinating and wonderful, because you could get what you want or what you need. So going back to direction, coming from Latin directio, from
yes, you nailed it.
yes, I know this. From dirigery, or I'm not saying that right either, but
You got it. Yes.
dis apart, and regere, that's disregere. So directio from disregere, and in Latin it sounds different, I'm sure, but to dis is to apart, and to
Mm,
regere is to rule or to guide straight. So to regere also gives us right, regulate,
mm,
regal, rector. So I mean, I could go on a whole tangent
yeah,
about right
yeah, yeah.
and what we think is right or
We
righteous.
should. We could get in there. We could, because we talk about truth also.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much related, right? And right? Oh my gosh, I
I
do.
mean, we have a right hand, so we can't not talk about
Right.
right.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Right. So it and that's
Just
oh my
kidding.
gosh, yeah. Okay, let's do that. But I to direct something is also to rule it straight or to
Mm,
align along a single governing line. And I think there's a lot of shadow in righteousness, and I think there's a lot of
Hmm.
shadow in like what we even call the right or the wrong or the right and the left or the right and the you know
Yes.
yeah. So
Correct.
um
Accurate.
so to direct is like, yeah, there's something along those. I literally, as I say this, I'm like, wow, that's so funny. There's something along those lines of like fluidity
Mm-hmm.
and again movement, and again we are always moving, and so it's like, well, we're either moving in a direction we know we're going, or we're moving in a direction we don't know we're going, and so longing and desire are both rooted in absence, what is not here yet. Longing makes you feel the distance in your body, that, and you're almost like lengthened by it. And desire makes the missing thing astronomic. It makes it seem large and like it has not yet arrived. And direction is what happens when the longing and desire organize themselves into a line. It is wanting made geometric and ruled straight. And so that is one,
Mm-hmm.
this, everything I'm explaining is like one pathway to orienting towards something. And together they sketch into something like you feel a pull, longing towards something radiant and absent desire. And that pull, when crystallizes, becomes a direction and a governance of the self towards a point. And so that is the subtle difference um, in agency and not agency, I think. And so that's,
I agree.
and that goes back to capacity. And that's why we go in on this whole episode of ranting about these three simple words. Because if you don't have the capacity to acknowledge that you have agency, or even like if or even acknowledge that you have an internal world because the external world is so loud, or vice versa, truly, I mean, yeah, you can live in your internal world and just neglect your external world too. So
Yes.
the balance in all things. That's my little Libra rant on
Loved it. I
that.
loved
What do
it.
you want to say about right, yeah, what's right?
Ooh. Ooh. Well, when you were talking about um like the directionality and knowing what you want in life, the first thing that came to mind for me is I never knew what I wanted in life, and I think that's why um I job hopped so much.
Wow.
I was like, I don't see myself in an office. I don't see myself in anything. I didn't. All I wanted was to pay off debt, and that was a direction. That was a desire. And as I started that journey of paying off debt, that was my straight line. That was my direction. Um, I realized that I didn't for I still ask myself, why is it that I couldn't be in more than 1 year in a job? Like that was the max. And I think a lot of it had to do with I didn't like office politics. I didn't like having to, chameleon myself, transform my personality to different people in different leadership tiers and the bureaucracy of whatever thing. I also didn't like that I was going to just be known for one thing, like this title, and that's it. I was like, but I'm so much more and I can do so much more. So, all I'm trying to say with that piece before talking about right, and maybe this is the segue, is that there's no one right way.
Mm-hmm.
I just realized that I had certain anchoring points. Being free, whatever that meant for me, freedom of lifestyle, freedom of time, freedom of learning, freedom of working with different people, because I think certain industries gravitated towards certain groups of people or demographics or whatever. And I just loved being in multitudes. I liked being with people older than me, younger than me, people who didn't look like me, people, all different people. I liked that. So knowing that about myself, what was true for me, what was right for me, I think has always been my path, my direction. That's always been for these past 12 years, and even before, but like just professionally talking about corporate jobs. um I've always known that about myself, and that has always been the the guiding star. So even if I didn't know I need to make this money, or I can make less money this season, or I actually need a job that has benefit, or like whatever the thing is, I've been able to pivot because um I just went back to what was true. And I've seen some of my friends really struggle with this because they will get hung up on titles, on certain industries. And so, going back to what is right, like what is right for me will most definitely not be what's right for someone else. And I just typed in Google the etymology for the word right, and it says that it means to straighten or to direct. And so what I think about that is kind of a measurement. Like, is this crooked? I have to get it aligned right. Um, and it says that over a millennia, I'm just quoting Google now. It says over millennia, this root of the word right has branched into numerous languages, creating a fascinating connection between direction, correctness, and the law. So, what is right? What is not right? And I think this is where it's interesting that they mention law, because is it right to kill somebody or have a death sentence? Is it right? Is abortion right? Is this right? Is this right? And again, going back to truth, I personally don't think there's an objective thing. I think that again, having the availability. Like, for example, in the United States, it's a big thing to have the right to a gun, a right to bear arms. Whether people believe that is right is respectfully beside the point, because it exists, kind of like drugs exist, marijuana exists, prostitution exists. All these things exist, whether we as individuals think they're moral or not, whether we're in agreement with it. So, um, it's interesting. This word right is about straightening and directness, because in my perspective, if people are going to have marijuana, legalize it. Like, we can tax it. Like, people are going to do what they're going to do, in my opinion. So it's like kids. We're kids. So just saying, you can't have that candy. No, you can't do it. You're still going to desire it. Maybe your body needs that. Maybe we need that a bit. And so I don't know what the correct way of going about legalizing marijuana, for example, is. I don't know what the correct way of having people have access to abortion is, because it still is a medical thing. Um, Even if, women are at that stage of birth and there's a danger to the mother or whatever, like, I'm just throwing different scenarios. It still might be a medical option. I don't know. But all I'm saying is that the pursuit of correctness as an objective thing is, I think, incorrect. I think it's wrong, because I don't think that anyone has has the correct way to say something about someone else's experience, um or something. Like, I think there is a correctness in not just killing people. Like, that's not a thing. I don't think that's a thing. um but I think in being able to um be as conscientious, as aware, um creating I don't know what the infrastructure in the US would look like, but um I think just dictating, this is right, the two extremes, like, that negates the nuance of life, that things will be crooked whether we like it or not. And just to course correct it, it has to be this way. I will just say, I think that's what I saw this guy, I forget his name, he's a comedian. I forget his name, but he said, he was on this podcast, and he said that, like, Trump is the Obama for white people, or for certain white people. And that was so interesting the way he said that, because I feel like Obama, like, putting aside uh, the politics, he was the first black president, male or female, that this country has ever had. And it's been, I don't know, 60 years since civil rights. So that's quite a feat. Like, the first, and the infrastructure being what they are, um, you know, um, that may not be as advantageous for certain people to be able to go up in the system and being a lawyer and all these things. Like, I think there was a lot of pride. There is a lot of pride in him being able to represent a whole community, a whole culture that has that were slaves that were abused in this country and all over the world because slavery happened in Latin America as well. Um, and so I think that like to course correct what is right, what's the right direction this country is going in, is I guess voting for Trump twice. um, and I think it's I don't want to say interesting because it's not interesting. I think it's sad because um, again, putting the politics aside, like just seeing whether we choose to believe or not, I don't know, um, what Trump represents and the legal things and all this other stuff. Is it right for a businessman to be in a position of politics? Is it right for, I think he had, I don't even know, like sexual harassment, all the, is that right? Are there certain ethical, moral, like where are we putting the line for rightness, for correctness? Because if we're just course correcting uh blackness, brownness, DEI, then we're also creating other. So it's just like the balance is, where is the balance? And that's why I think I struggle with objectivity in general, because going back to my specific example at work, um, I have to pick a trade-off. Like me deciding to be a parentified, not, well, not even deciding, but just exuding the qualities that I guess I have of a parentified child at work. Is that right for me in this season, knowing that there is no infrastructure at work? And that's a decision, a direction, a desire, a longing, being in the longing and the grief I have to sit with, contend with, because no one else is going to decide for me. The infrastructure is not going to show up. Um, so it's just, I think it's very challenging. Um, and ultimately, I will say it's unfortunate that we lose the perspective of seeing each other as people throughout all of this pursuit of rightness. Um, because at the end of the day, we're all going to die one way or another, and we all want to live however we choose to live and have a right to that life. Have a directness, I mean, I'm just looking at the definition, a directness, a path to live, and whatever um path we're on now, whatever group we're in now, we're all not having that right to live, whether we are in whatever bubble we're in, or identity, demographic, whatever it is. Um, so I don't know. I think it's just really challenging, unfortunate, hard. We're all in this longing, um, and I think we get stuck. What my observation is, I think we get stuck in what is right for me is right for others. And I think that's why there's like this extremism on both sides, and why I think Sarah and I always say we're moderate leaning in different directions, but moderate, because we strive to see both sides and be a source of balance. Um, and I think that is right, is being able to see the different perspectives, and hopefully, having empathy and witnessing others. Um, yeah.
Yeah, but it's kind of an oxymoron that um by, like you said, kind of dehumanizing the other side because we're so, I don't know, stuck to our narrative or story or perspective or our own truth, or we're thinking the way we live is the way everyone should live. Um it's kind of an oxymoron that actually is what causes like this loss of
Mm,
like the value of someone else's story. like, we don't get to see these other perspectives, and maybe that's why because I was thinking this when you were saying something earlier, like, why do we kinda dehumanize that other side? Um, and maybe that comes from this place of thinking, well, maybe they just wanna live like that, or whatever that line of thinking is. But then even that line of that doesn't quite line up with, actually respecting people for how they wanna live? So,
But right,
it's
right,
it is
right,
weird and
exactly.
confusing and hard. There's all these, like, when you say in your workplace, like, the infrastructure won't show up, my solution-oriented brain, which is, like, the most male thing about me. I'm so sorry I said that. I'm, um but it's
No.
hard, but I mean, yeah, I say I'm sorry, but I'm also not because, like, it to connect emotionally about just reflecting and being with somebody, I do think it's hard sometimes for anyone to know fully. I mean, even when we were sending voice notes earlier, I was like, I am sitting here and, like, listening to a voice note. First of all, it's so different than, like, even this, and,
Yes.
um listening, I'm, like, in this certain feeling, right, and, like, empathy, and then if I don't respond quickly or right away, I kind of lose that empathy, I've noticed, and because I kind of am going about my day in a way that I'm like, am I dehumanizing my friends by missing their voice notes?
Mm,
And I've wondered this with more than just
mm,
you. Um, but,
mm,
like, am I there's an etiquette to communication and, like, hence having to take an emergency call is like, there's an etiquette to timelines and legal documents and, like, the priority level of certain things, and, I have a certain friend that I didn't text back. I forgot to text her back for, a long time during a really stressful period of my life, and I knew that it was a
mm,
hard time for her too, and by the time I texted her back, I feel like it was several weeks, and I thought to myself, like, these people that I care a lot about, if I don't communicate and we and I guess am talking about this because I know we are open with each
yes,
other about this to a degree,
yes, yes.
about, like, how do we stay connected and show people that we care without them feeling devalued or dehumanized or, like the way that they, in other contexts here, are choosing
Mhm,
to live their
mhm,
life, and
mm,
they're choosing a different direction than I'm choosing, and
yes.
if we can't see that and acknowledge, like, we're all part of the same
Yes,
tapestry,
yes,
and if we can't, yeah, we do lose out on so much um
yes.
by not seeing that full tapestry, I suppose, or thinking that, um, one is greater or worse than the other. So
Mm,
I do see why, objective truth, because I struggle with this too. That there's this comedian Taylor Tomlinson, put out a Netflix special called Prodigal Daughter, and it is
oh.
amazing, amazing. If you're someone who struggles with religious trauma, you should watch it. And even if you don't, like, if you're a religious person at all, I think it's really wonderful. Because she names things with that people who like us, like, we want to believe in an ultimate creator, in a
Mm,
divine
mhm,
order or
mhm,
divine
mhm,
truth
mhm,
or whatever,
mhm,
this
mhm, mhm.
objective, like, even if it's, that the universe is good and giving and abundant and I can create love in my life. Like, okay, that in and of itself, if that's your substitution for God. We want to believe in something and orient towards something, and I suppose that's where, like, the desire for, well, how do we clarify this direction that we wanna go into? How can we clarify
Mm,
the desire that's already within us and acknowledge where we're at, and acknowledge that we
mm,
don't have to move in the same direction as other people, um, at the same time or same pace or anything
yes.
really, um,
Oh my gosh.
but that's
I
why it's
just
nice
want to
to
say,
align with others, because we can
yeah,
discover our own. I feel like
mm,
there was something else I wanted to say, but no, that's okay. Think say it 'cause
you
it'll
sure?
come
You
back to
sure?
me.
Okay. I just like as you were saying everything, I two memories. very recent moments come to mind for me. And one is, if you're my friend and you know who I'm talking about, then this is with love. It's always with love, but just if you know who you are, you know who you are. There was this moment last week, past couple weeks, and my friend, I've known her since college, so you definitely know who you are, girl. I've known her since college, and we were totally two different women, two different girls back then, different, going through different things, and to be able to stay connected and stay, even though I think we've gone in different directions, and had potentially different desires and longings in our lives, but we still, she's an hour from me, we're relatively close, and she asked me to go to her baby shower, and very excited for her, very, it's a huge joy. And I don't want to air out everything, but suffice it to say that I don't like her husband. I don't like your partner. For the reasons that you know about, because last year he did a thing and I was there, and um you decided to continue with him, which is your choice. So all of it is to say that I didn't feel comfortable going to the baby shower because I felt like, is it right for me to be a part of something where I don't feel like I want to be a part of? I feel like I would be enabling something, a direction that she's going down
Mm.
that I don't feel is right. I don't feel it's true. I don't feel it's correct. Um, because I wouldn't want it for me, but also this isn't the type of friend I would want to be. Is just, if I see somebody going down, you know, whatever path, I don't know. And knowing that it could potentially continue to harm them, hurt them in any way. I don't want to be that friend. I'm not okay. And so, long story short, I had to hold my boundary, put some big woman uterus pants on, and tell her that I'm sorry I didn't go to your baby shower. But I can't show up in moments like that feel disingenuous to what I feel, what I think is right. And she was saying, but I just want you to be there for me. I don't, you're not there for him, you're there for me. And the example she provided was a family member of hers going through a similar situation with um, the family member's daughter, and doesn't like the husband. The guy is a, what do you call it, SOB. And the mother is just, um, it's her aunt, is just like enduring it because she doesn't feel that she could say anything about it or whatever. And I said to my friend, I was kind of like, what, if I was a mom, if that was me, I would have to make a choice and say, am I enabling my daughter to stay in a relationship, even though it's not my choice, because my daughter's going to do what she's going to do. But I can say, that guy's not welcome in my house for XYZ, and this is my home, and I have the I can put my boundary. Or, and the trade-off is, maybe my daughter doesn't want to have a relationship with me anymore because that's her prerogative. And I said all of this to my friend, and saying, like, you can't impose on me what you think, because that's also hurting me, is the imposition, and also just being there for you when I have seen and witnessed and whatever the badness. Let's just put it like that. Why would I want to see you hurt? And for the sake of you just having me there, like, what type of friend am I to just witness that? For me, that's not love, that's not care. And I've also been in a relationship that was very bad, let's say it that way. So why would I doubly do that? So that was really hard conversation, because it's like, she thinks something is right and I think something is right, and our two friendship languages, our two love languages is not coalescing,
Mhm.
because she, And that's fine. Respect, don't impose. And the same thing, the other memory, the other moment that came to me when, as you were speaking, was with my husband, because we were having some talk about finances. And we've recently been uniting everything, and that's been a whole journey. Um, and I said something along the lines of planning. Like, I'm a planner. I've always, you know, I don't think my job is guaranteed. I don't think any job is guaranteed. So that already informs the way I think about money. Like, okay, I need to save this much. I need to do this. If I'm going to travel, I got to do this, because I don't feel like the ground is solid. And that's been my experience, and it's been my perspective this past decade. And my husband has a different perspective. And so the two perspectives, experiences clashing. And I was kind of like, I think I said something along the lines of like, I'm not asking you to be me. I'm just asking you to empathize or try to understand. And I think that was when we had that moment, that clash. I feel like I had an out of body experience, because I was just kind of like, I don't think I want anybody to be like me. That's a lot. Like, why do I want to see myself everywhere? I just want to be able to have others empathize. It's like, I read somewhere, it's not about the golden rule. It's not treat others the way they want to be treated. It's treat others the way, or no, I'm sorry, it's not treat others the way you want to be treated. It's treat others the way they want to be treated. So if my husband comes to me and says, um, I need time before you tell me about your day. Okay, he's asking for time. I should respect that. If I choose not to respect that, it's because I'm overriding his feelings, his truth, because I really want to tell him something. Or at work, it could be the same thing. So those two moments stand out to me because I feel like they encapsulate this thing about right. Like, right for me, overcorrecting something for me might mean something to my friend or my husband. And it's kind of like, do I want to be in right relationship with my husband within that relationship? Or am I trying to be right for me, for my own? And I think that's hard because the whatever's happening externally, I can't control. I can only control myself. But to be in some sort of um relationship with the outside, like what I do is going to affect others, and then that's going to affect me, and the whole boundaries and all that. So I just wanted to say those were the two moments that stood out to me as far as like desire and right and um truth, like all of that. And also it could be said at work and all these other things. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, these examples are um it's almost like we can only hope to have relationships where communication, like, we are actually can express what is true to us and feel safe enough to do that. Um, I feel like that's also standing in your sovereignty too, when you actually feel like you can stand up for yourself in a way. Um,
Mhm.
by saying like, "No, I'm not gonna show up because I don't condone what's going on." And I've just talked to so many people who, I shouldn't say I've talked to so many people, but, um, like, myself included in expressing this aspect of my life too with other people, um,
Mhm.
it's like we want ways to prove that we believe what we say we believe, or, like, we want to be able to
Mm.
prove our values or live our values in some way because so much of life, and I think this is what drains our capacity as well, so much of life, um, forces us to live beyond our values and outside of our moral comfort zone, and, like, just living with and in and, being forced to be a part of systems to be able to run a business. Like, we're all social media content creators now, like, gross. Like, gross. Like, no, not all of us want to do this, you know? I mean, clearly we love this type of content. And I think like this long
Yeah.
form content and part of what we do, there is a joy in it. And I think that's part of like, okay, we are meeting our environment to the best of our ability. We're finding our
Mm,
skills and our talents and our gifts and what makes us comfortable and not comfortable. We're finding our edges and pushing us where we want to, but also so many people, I mean, like, social media is a great example. Like, I know a lot of people who, um, run businesses without social media, but there is just some businesses that if you wanted to start right now, that you really would need
yeah.
social media to get out there. So, I don't
Yeah.
know. It's
Yeah.
not That's just an example of, like, living inside of, um I mean,
Mhm.
real estate's another example. If you want to own something, if you want to own real estate these days, a mortgage
Yeah.
is probably your best option. Do I have something of a moral objection to mortgages? Yes, yes, I do. To pay twice as much, but that's why I think
Mm,
um I mean, going back to truth, I'm like just looking at the little notes that I felt were important, and the ambiguity of truth I think is also,
mm.
I think that's what makes, like, what do you learn and what do you have capacity to learn so hard.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the ambiguity of how real estate worked was my, like, fire under my feet to learn about it, and I think just being curious about it and, like, having a natural
Mm,
curiosity and interest really helps, with acknowledging our skills and talents in our work, um, but, just because you can kind of force yourself into roles and systems doesn't mean we actually have the capacity to sustain them and continue to re-evolve what truth means or what is true, so that we can actually put ourselves in the right direction, because I think that's getting lost is okay, as long as want to, even if the direction is kind of like, don't know, what do you, I mean, we're not talking about hard goals here, I feel like we're talking about, I mean, that could be what we're orienting toward, but the direction of what we organize ourselves around into, like the direct or the
mhm.
definition says, like, a vector line.
Mhm.
That vector
Mhm.
line we know by human experience is actually more kind of like this, but I think that the essence is still true, that we are moving in a direction because we can clarify our desire about something. And longing for something is the same way, and I think noticing when you're stuck and gripped for
Mm,
whatever reason by these things, I think that's helpful information when it comes to direction of, like, well, is that a place you want to be? If so, great. If not, okay. What are we going to do next? Cuz we're moving anyway. Um
yes.
yeah, and there was something about truth. But I'm starting to get hungry. And so maybe that's why I'm like, what was I going to say? I lost it. That's fine.
No, I think our conversation has been so juicy. I mean, always. And I think that's
Mm.
why I love also just to echo the long form because I feel like, that's why I don't want books ever to die or like learning and traveling because there's this sense of immersion and depth that I feel like, as people we need that. I that's why I think I really love I'm going to rewatch the show Vikings because
It's so
I
good. It's so good.
it's so good. It's so good. I just love knowing that we're animals. Let me just say it like that.
Mhm.
I love knowing that we're animals and that what we really truly need is people, is each other, is sun, is air, is water,
Mhm.
good food. Like that's all we really need. And even I've come to the place in my life where when even my birthday is I'm a June baby, so I'm a Cancer, June 25th, you guys. Oh my god. And so, and I love my birthday, but I don't love it for like presents and whatever. It's like for me an excuse to travel and to put myself through a new experience.
Yeah.
And so I love that. Like, I love, okay, we're gonna go try this food, or we're gonna go learn this thing. We're gonna do this thing together. Um, and that's what I take with me. Like, seeing Sarah was so awesome. Being in her space, being in her environment, and spending physical time with her, and feeling her as a person. Like, oh my gosh, she's fleshy, and I'm fleshy, and we're
Yeah.
here, and
Yeah.
yeah. And so I love that, and I think that I watch Vikings and all these shows because it helps me personally remember that things can be quite simple. I mean, not to say that I don't like having my rights as a woman, and there's certain things now, the architecture of society, but just when it comes to the nuts and bolts and the seeds, and just the needs are just, I think, each other, and sun, and the food, and I love that, because I feel like that potentially makes it easier when we don't have capacity. It's like, and I don't, or the direction or the desire, like, so untethered. Like, I was telling Sarah, I had such a stressful day yesterday, but I made myself some mac and cheese. I had some really nourishing food that felt satisfying for me. My two dogs comforting me because my husband's on a work trip. So just like coming back to my needs, my body, my breath, all of that good stuff. It's like, if things feel so out of touch, out of balance, like, just coming back to ourselves, our bodies, our anchor, I find really helpful. So I just want to say I love the depth. I love this experience and all of it, because it just feels so luscious, and awesome, and luxurious, and all the things. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I'll echo that by saying um to philosophize, to think, to ruminate, to dream, to contextualize and extrapolate and break down this vision and the way that the threads of our thoughts actually are the threads of our reality and our world and the 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 eyes we have to see the vision and the perspective that we get to hold in this life, I feel like is because we are, because we have this essence of what is true to us, um,
Mhm.
I feel like we have this obligation in some way to make
Mm.
sense of it. So I really appreciate the opportunity to make sense of it with you. And um yeah, I was just I feel like there's something about truth that's just stuck in my mind that needs to come out. And um maybe it's just that it really bothers me,
Mm.
because what is controversial to talk about, which I feel like we go there very often, only
Yeah.
exists because truth is ambiguous in its nature.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
yet, we do need food and water, and we have these deep, fundamental knowings about what we do need in order to survive. It is true that if we don't eat, eventually we'll die. Like, and how we can play in that realm of, um, yeah, really shifting reality. I don't know. I guess I'm just sitting with this controversy of truth. Maybe that's what we call this episode.
Mm.
Because how the heck did desire and longing
Mm.
kind of relate back to truth, or maybe we just kind of latched onto it for the whole episode. I don't know.
I
But that
think both.
the theme of longing and desire and direction really, I think, it goes back to agency and sovereignty and our ability
Mhm.
to say, no, this is what's happening to me right now, and
Right.
that's what truth
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
or
That
something like
exact that you took it right out of my mouth. That's what I was
there
gonna
it is.
say.
Okay,
Yes. There it
got it.
is. Landed that plane, bitch. We did that.
Thank
No,
you.
exactly.
Thank you, Raquel.
Yeah.
Thank you, anyone out there who's listening in the ether, even if it's decades from now. So this is
Yes.
interesting.
Yes. Oh my gosh, imagine when if we look back on this in like in 5 years or something, you're like, do you remember this? Oh my gosh. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I'm actually starting to like really enjoy thinking about that because looking back on pictures of me and video of me in my 20s, I'm like, wow, I look so young. So like, hello, future Sarah, look at how young and you are.
Oh my God. Can I just say on thinking about desire and stuff, like I remember when I was in my early 20s and I felt like, oh, I needed to lose weight or whatever. I felt not whatever, thin or fit,
Yeah.
whatever. And now I look back and I'm like, there was nothing wrong. Like there was,
No,
and
totally.
so yeah,
Yeah, I
so
was
like the whole directionality and desiring like definitely changes. And yeah, I don't know what else I want to say with that besides just like going easy with those things in the moment because it's like
yeah.
I don't want mac and cheese right now. That was a yesterday thing. Today I want something else. And so I don't know. There's like a temporal um thing to like the ambiguity, the nuance, the like, you know. So yeah, so it's gonna be interesting in like 5, 10 years when we rewatch or like oh my god, what?
And I feel like that's why, I mean, I've said this before, but I feel like that's why I keep showing up is mostly for me. It's mostly for you. It's mostly for us and our relationship and our ability to learn and grow together. And the fact that it's out there in public and that's part of the project, that's part of the intention, that's part of the direction, that's part of the desire, that's part of the longing for clarity that we both have in our lives, as well as longing and desiring to find other people out there who share in this interest of our professional interest, but also who maybe think the same way we do, because that's why we've connected. It's like, oh my gosh, you mean I had to search all 50 states to find someone else who thinks like me? Um, it's like, yeah, how cool is
No.
that we actually can find each other? So I hope this gets out there.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, everyone, and always thanks to Sarah. I'm remembering right now when we were in the airport parking lot and like we couldn't let each other go, and I was like, "Oh my God, hugging you," and you were hugging me, and so that's with me right now. So I'm sending that to you right now, that whole feeling, that whole moment, and sending that to everyone. I know it's just
What was the Tina Turner song you mentioned that day?
oh shit, was it simply the best? No,
Simply the Best?
um, what's love got to do? I don't even. Those are the only two that I can remember
Okay,
right
maybe,
now
I
because
don't know, but we
they're
should
too
add that to the
popular.
playlist.
We
I
should
didn't.
add that to the play. Oh
Okay.
yeah, if you all don't know, if this is your first episode, we have a Spotify playlist, um, and it's in all the places. It's in the bottom. This is also on Substack, so yeah, there's that. But yeah,
You'll find us there.
yes, you'll find us.
Or we'll find you.
Totally. All right, everyone. I love you. We love you.
Oh.
Love,
Because
peace,
we know next
respect.
one's the last one. That's what it is. Welcome to the Midwestern goodbye, everybody.
Oh, that's right. You said that to me. It was like it took forever for us to say goodbye, you guys. It was not goodbye. It was see you later. But it took forever to just, yeah. It was so great.
Just
I
like
carried
this.
that with me though.
We
Yeah,
have to
just
say
like
see you later, but we can't because the next one's the last one and we don't want it to end.
oh my God. There's probably more to come. There's probably more.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But this is reality. See, we're here to wrestle with reality. Okay, turn it off before we can make it.
Okay. Bye everyone. Bye. I'm turning it off. It's off. It's off.
Okay,
One, two,
bye.
three.